Welcome back to the Fantasy Fortune YouTube channel. And today we have some wide receivers that I think are disgusting. Well, some of them. But 5 receivers that I have not been drafting whatsoever in my best ball drafts. I haven't had any redrafts ones yet, but they're coming up here in August. So these are the players that I have pretty much been avoiding, and they all have their own reasoning. We've posted 2 wide receiver target videos, and I will have another one in a few days here. But this one is going to be the avoids. So, with the first one being Zay Flowers. I've never understood the hype for Zay Flowers. Now, first of all, he goes in between wide receiver 24 to wide receiver 30. It's kind of hovered around the past few months, and I think the most recent one I've seen him is wide receiver 30, which isn't terrible, but I just think that there are better guys around his ADP that either are safer or just have higher upside. I think Zay Flowers' upside is extremely capped, and a lot of people think it is the other way around, which I don't see that. So he has not been top 30 in points per game yet, which I know, wide receiver 31, wide receiver 32 in points per game. But and I'll get to why I have a problem with that. He's a 70 catch, 800 to 1,000 yard guy, 4 to 5 touchdowns. I don't expect that to change. And some of the reasons for that being Lamar Jackson last season, if you look at his stats, by far the best season of his career, close to his 2019 MVP season. But career highs in passing yards by about 500 yards. Career highs in touchdowns by 5, and so he had 36 in 2019, 41 last season. Other than that, he hasn't thrown more than 26. Now he has the same returning team. He improves every single season. So who am I to say that that's not going to happen again? But history tells us, based on his game log and people having career years and posting career highs, it doesn't typically happen again the next season. And with him posting up 41 passing touchdowns, and for Flowers to only have 4 of them, some might argue, well, that should go up, right? Like, he only had 4 out of the 41 passing touchdowns, receiving touchdowns. Like, he should get more than that. Zay Flowers has never been a touchdown guy, A. B, Lamar Jackson, again, career high, throwing 41 touchdowns. I would not be banking on him to tie or surpass his career high again in the following season. And another thing that I saw from Fantasy Points data on Twitter, the top red zone passing touchdown seasons in Fantasy Points data history, all these guys are between 30 to 35% success rate in the red zone. Lamar Jackson had nearly a 50% red zone passing touchdown percentage last season. That's a ginormous historical outlier. Again, I don't want to be sitting here and doubting the man Lamar Jackson, but history tells us that that is not throwing for almost 50%. And of course, I'm freaking lagging again. Come on. Okay, I've been sitting here for 10 minutes trying to get this lagging to stop, but I can't. So hopefully you guys are okay with just listening until this gets fixed. Wi-Fi is terrible. The Ravens in the red zone, A, obviously want to run Derrick Henry. They're a run-heavy team. B, they like to throw to Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman, who had 8+ receiving touchdowns last year. And now they add DeAndre Hopkins, who at this point in his career is pretty much a red zone target, strictly a red zone target, right? He's going to be another option in the red zone. Flowers is not one of their targets in the red zone. So I would not expect the 4 to 5 touchdowns to change. And another thing is, like, you look at last year, my God, the inconsistency was crazy. Now, for best ball, that doesn't matter too much. But for a week-to-week basis in redraft where Flowers was a guy last season, around a wide receiver 3. So on a week-to-week basis, he is a guy that you're deciding whether to start or sit. And it was unbelievably hard to decide that last year. If you look at his game logs here, I mean, let's see, 1, 2 top 12 finishes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Only 5 top 24 finishes. Let's go. We're not lagging. Holy shit. And, I mean, you can see some of these really bad weeks. Wide receiver 83, wide receiver 94, 47, 51, 54. On a week-to-week basis, he is tough to know when to start and sit. And I know that a lot of people just don't care about that. I've said the same thing about Kyler Murray in previous videos, and I get a lot of disagreements being like, oh, inconsistency doesn't matter. I think it clearly does. Obviously not for best ball, but when you're choosing to start or sit these players on a weekly basis, and it comes down to, matchup and extremely high ceiling and extremely low floor, and this dude is being wide receiver 2 and then wide receiver 94 the next week or 51 the next week, like that's tough, and I cannot stand that. So I think I view that as a negative. But so for me, Zay Flowers will continue to hover around a mid to low end wide receiver 3. And, guys in this range that I prefer, Calvin Ridley, Jawan Jennings, probably Chris Godwin, definitely Jacoby Myers, who's the most underrated receiver here, Jalen Waddle, George Pickens, Cortland Sutton, just significantly more upside. So, and you can see number 2 is going to be Xavier Worthy. I just cannot get behind this hype. I think he's the most overhyped player in fantasy football right now. And I'll start it off with that kind of viral meme with the HR lady. Xavier Worthy had 59 catches for 638 yards and 6 touchdowns. And everyone thinks he's the next coming of Jesus Christ. And then there's Rome Odunze, who puts up very similar receptions, more receiving yards, a few fewer touchdowns, and he's going 30 picks later. And in my opinion, Rashee Rice is the clear wide receiver 1 here. Before his injury last season, he was averaging 21.6 points per game. The wide receiver 2, 9 targets and 95-plus yards per game. That was on pace for 127 catches, 1,498 yards, and 9.4 touchdowns. Or I guess this split is including the last 9 games, not the last 3 games, including playoffs and his rookie season where he kind of broke out. And along with that, team target share when actually on the field last season, yes, it was 3 games, but Rashee Rice was second to only Puka Nacua with a 40.3% target share, which, is kind of insane and probably not too sustainable. But I mean, you see all these other guys on this list when actually on the field, the wide receiver 1 for Kansas City is going to have a giant target share. Now, I'm sure that'll come down a little bit with a more crowded offense and Xavier Worthy, having a bit of a breakout second half last season. But, popping up his weeks 1 through 3, not too good. Wide receiver 48. And just overall in the season, I think a guy that had everything go his way. Not only did the wide receiver 1 in your offense get injured for the season, the second option in Travis Kelce showed a huge age decline fall off at 35 years old and was used as a decoy for most of the season. Not only with those two, the RB1 in Isaiah Pacheco goes down and misses majority of the season. And then another wide receiver who's getting bounce back hype in Hollywood Brown was out, the first 14 weeks or something like that of the season. So, I mean, I don't think he could have asked for anything else to go his way. Now, with this season, you have Rashee Rice back and looking fully healthy. You have Marquise Brown back. Travis Kelce still there. Isaiah Pacheco back. I think that this is a crowded offense. I think he's the clear not number 1 option. We'll see if he's the wide receiver or the second or third option with Travis Kelce. That's another discussion to be had. But I just can't get behind it. And another thing last season, now this could change, but the Chiefs' pass rate by season above a 60% from 2018 to 2023, 61 to 62% pass rate. And last season that came down to below 59%. Now again, they dealt with all those injuries. And so that could change. But Xavier Worthy finishing with under 700 yards and as the wide receiver 44, and I know it's the rookie season. He didn't start doing much till the second half of the season, and that typically is promising. So I'm not saying that he's going to be terrible this season, but I think the wide receiver 23 ADP is quite absurd, in my opinion, with Rashee Rice being the clear number one, and the guys that he's being drafted around, Jamison Williams, Mike Evans, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Cortland Sutton, who goes way later than him. I'm just like, I prefer those guys 10 times out of 10 over a guy that wasn't even a top 40 wide receiver with majority of the weapons on his team injured last season. So hopefully that made sense. But my third guy is going to be Garrett Wilson, and I want to kind of I'm not a huge I hate Garrett Wilson. I'm fading him. Do not draft him. So it's kind of tricky putting him in this video because I'll come across as a Garrett Wilson hater. He's going to be a bust. It's not necessarily that. It's just a price that I haven't found myself paying. The wide receiver 14 or 15, depending on what platform it is. I think there's guys in his range that have way more upside. And like we'll look at last season first, wide receiver 21, 14.8 points per game. Obviously, his snap share and his target share and total targets are among the top half of the league. He's not a touchdown scorer. He's not necessarily too efficient with yards per route run. And his last three seasons, right, he's been wide receiver 30 in points per game, wide receiver 32 in points per game, and last season he's drafted as wide receiver 7, 8. He was inside the top 10 last year, and he was wide receiver 18 in points per game. Like, he wasn't this ginormous bust, but he definitely did not live up to the hype. And whether that be just the Jets' offense was terrible, Aaron Rodgers was not what he was supposed to be. I know that Garrett Wilson is a dog. He's made the catch of the year the past 2 seasons, I think. He's a freaking monster. But the situation, I think everyone is under the assumption that it's just going to be better because Adams is gone and there's a new quarterback in town. But when you haven't been top 15 in points per game for 3 seasons straight, now you have Justin Fields coming in, and I am a Justin Fields truther. I believe in Justin Fields kind of as an NFL quarterback. I think he's never really had a fair shot, but more so as a fantasy quarterback, I think he's a top 8 to top 10 option. But that is because of his rushing, not because of his passing. And when you're having a starting quarterback come in projected for 2,500 yards and 14.5 passing touchdowns on the season, well, how is that supposed to get me excited? And I know everyone's talking about, they have the Ohio State connection from college. These two were monsters together in college. Sure, but this is the NFL. This is an offense that's probably not going to be good. Fields' career high passing yards is 2,500 yards, and his other full season was 2,200 yards, 16 and 17 passing touchdowns. I think this is a pretty fair Vegas line. So it's just hard for me to get excited. And you look at Mike Clay's projections for this season. This offense is ranked 31st out of 32 teams in the NFL. I just can't get behind it. And I posted this in my Vegas part 2 video, so go check that out. I know you guys are loving the Vegas lines versus ADP, but I popped up a Garrett Wilson one. His line is 949 receiving yards and 4.5 touchdowns. He goes as wide receiver 14 or 15. And you can find guys like George Pickens and Jalen Waddle with the exact same line, and Jalen Waddle with more touchdowns going in the late 20s, early 30s. And I'm not saying I prefer these two guys over him. But like I said, in the guys I named in his range, Terry McLaurin, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, maybe even Marvin Harrison, who is actually next on this list, I think he's a somewhat safe option. He's played 17 games for 3 seasons in a row, and he's going to give you 12 to 15 points per game. He's going to be in the top 24. I'm not worried about that whatsoever. But when you have the lowest passing attempts and second lowest offensive scoring projections, it's really hard for me to get excited. I know he's going to have an elite target share. He's going to That's what. Yeah, he's going to have an elite target share, but the touchdowns probably not going to be more than 4, 5, 6. Receptions, he had over 100 last season, which was a lot of the reason that he finished as high as he did at wide receiver 18. Reception lines are not out yet, but I do not see him getting 100 receptions with Justin Fields. And you can, by the way, before I get to 4, which is Marvin Harrison Jr., if you want to see my free draft guide, I'll link it down below. This is what it includes. I have my own tiered rankings by position. I have targets and avoids. Soon I'll be putting best and worst picks by round, riskiest and safest. I have all these advanced stats with target share, targets, red zone targets from every position. I even have things like strength of schedule, bye weeks, offensive line rankings, and new head coaches and offensive coordinators in town and where they came from. So I think it's a very helpful tool. Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm going to say the same thing as Garrett Wilson. I'm not just so ginormously out on him where I will never take him. I do best ball drafts every day pretty much, and I'll mix in some Marvin Harrison Jr. here and there just in case I'm missing out on this breakout season that everyone is hyping up. But for me, I have really yet to see a valid reason as to why he is going to break out. Last season he was wide receiver 43 in PPR points per game, yet he's going at about wide receiver 16, 17 right now. Receptions, receiving yards, and yards per route run were not too good. We know that he just didn't really live up to the hype. And I'm going to pop up these 2 tweets from some good guys I follow on Twitter with Chris O'Brien saying, did we not learn our lesson with Marvin Harrison Jr. last year around wide receiver 40 in points per game, 78% true catch rate, which is outside the top 100, yards per route run, like I just said, was outside the top 50. And this exact reason right here, with Arizona having the exact same offense, with still Drew Petzing calling plays, 12th in highest rush rate. They were 7th in rushing yards per game last season. I also think he's going to improve, right? His ADP, if it's in the mid-20s, I would be like, hell yeah, that's a great fucking pick. But last year we drafted him inside the top 10 or 12, expecting him to be elite right away. Didn't work out. Wide receiver 40, whatever. And this year he's only going like 5 or 6 wide receivers later. We're again drafting him at his ceiling. And I'm right, whatever. What if he breaks out and finishes that wide receiver 8? Like, sure. But a guy that finishes wide receiver 43 in points per game last season has the exact same situation. And he's going as wide receiver like 16. That is drafting him near his ceiling. And we've seen what his floor is. What if he puts up the exact same stats? What if he's just a little bit better with 1,000 yards and 6, 7 touchdowns? Like, that still isn't going to be enough for this ADP. And another thing, just another guy saying a similar thing. Yes, Marvin Harrison is the number 2 target for his team. His quarterback had an extremely low catchable target rate last season. He broke only 1 single tackle, doesn't really get designed looks, and plays for a team that was 22nd in pass attempts. But let's draft him inside the top 16 wide receivers, inside the top 30 overall. I think that is an extremely valid point. Now, this is not going to be something for everyone, but I have seen so many comments comparing Marvin Harrison Jr. to Marvin Harrison Sr. While I understand that is his dad, that has no correlation whatsoever to what Marvin is going to do in his career. And I'm a Colts fan. You can see all this Colts stuff. I love Marvin Harrison Sr. for what he did for the Colts, and I love Marvin Harrison Jr. I actually met him when I was probably 6 or 7 years old, so don't really remember. But he was around the Colts, growing up, and obviously I'm going to love a Colts wide receiver son, but when I don't have any statistical data to back up the breakout, I'm not just going to say, yeah, he's going to break out. Like, what is telling us that he's going to break out? Anyway, with this Marvin Harrison Sr. thing, I've had so many people disagree with me and be like, well, look what his dad did in his second year or in his career. Like, obviously he's going to break out. I've already said that really that has absolutely no, like, what his dad did 25, 30 years ago have anything to do with what he's going to do? Nothing. But even if it did, right? Marvin Harrison Sr. didn't do shit till his 4th season. Like, if you look at his stats, he had 836 yards and 8 touchdowns on 64 catches. The next year, he put up 7 more catches, 30 more yards, and 2 fewer touchdowns. Like, that was technically a worse season, PPR points per game. And then his third season, same thing. Way less catches. He played less games. But less everything, pretty much. So I don't understand that whatsoever. So don't be looking to say, oh, his dad was elite, so he'll be elite. That's not how it works. And one more chart from Matt Harmon over at Reception Perception. 81% success rate versus zone, 76% success rate versus press. Pretty below average contested catch rate and near historically low 4 in-space attempts across the sample. And I don't think I have this stat prepared, but there's another one that just shows how little he was used in pre-snap motion. It was among the bottom of the league. You can see his success by route. He can run routes, but his route percentage of what they're allowing him to do, he's not doing screens, slants, flats, not even posts. He's very limited to just an X wide receiver and had a very high rate of go balls, which really wasn't his game in college. So the thing here is just like, you can sit here and say, well, obviously, like, they're going to use him differently this year. Like, sure, we would hope so, but like, what is pointing at that? What has been said about that? We have no idea if they're going to use him in a different way because they like didn't do that last year. So hopefully they do. But just I think that it's a valid point to be like, what on earth actually points to him besides the fact that he bulked up a little bit and he's going into year 2? What points to this ginormous breakout? And again, here's the range he's going in. I definitely prefer Devontae Adams. I prefer Terry McLaurin, JSN, Mike Evans, and maybe DJ Moore as well, which is just simply the reason I don't take too much of him. And the last guy, I don't have too much because he's a rookie, and it's Travis Hunter. I really don't have a whole bunch of data to back this up, so I almost just didn't put it in the video, but I want to speak my opinion. So I'm going to say it, and I'll bring up the first. I did in my Vegas video on part 2. Check it out. I showed that Travis Hunter. Now, the lines are different across platforms. And the end of June, I checked Underdog, and his line is 750 receiving yards, 4.5 touchdowns. And I'm comparing him to Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, Jacoby Myers, who are going 10 to 15, 10 to 20 wide receivers later than him with a very similar line. And I'll pop up the tweet from Nick Ercolano at BDGE, who posted all the rookies in their lines. You can see Travis Hunter, ADP of wide receiver 30, going for 695 and 5.5. These lines are on BetMGM. But you can see all these guys behind him, like Colston Loveland, who's a tight end, 20 less yards and 1 less touchdown. Matthew Golden and Jaden Higgins, 45 less yards and 1 less touchdown, going 12 to 22 picks later. I'm a big Emeka Ibuka guy. Trey Harris. This isn't, a huge point, but the reason that I don't like Travis Hunter too much, let me see, I got to scroll up back to this Zay Flowers screenshot to show his range, but he's going as like wide receiver 31. I think that Juwan Jennings is safer. I think that Roma Dunze has just as much of a chance of breaking out. Chris Olave has been efficient when he's healthy. Chris Godwin was wide receiver 2 in points per game last season. Jacoby Myers has been top 24 for 2 seasons in a row. I think all those guys outside of probably Chris Olave I prefer over him. Now he's dropped, thankfully, in ADP. He was in the 20s above Jalen Waddle and George Pickens, which obviously I prefer them. But the reason I'm not too high on him is just because this is another season of projecting the Jaguars' offense to take a huge leap. Now, I do like Liam Cohen. I do think that he's going to make this offense better. but I don't think there's enough clarity. I'm not going to sit here and say Travis Hunter doesn't have upside. He's the second overall pick. But I think it's worth noting he's the second overall pick at both wide receiver and corner. I know they've said they want to play on him on offense more, but that doesn't really mean much. You never really know how that's going to go. He could have limited snap shares here and there on offense. There could be a corner that goes down, and all right, well, we gotta move Travis Hunter to more on the defensive side. Like, I think that's very much in the realm of possibility. So it's just hard for me to click a guy, especially in this range where there is some guys with upside or at least safer floors than Travis Hunter. It's kind of hard for me to get super invested into a guy that I'm not really sure what his snap percentage on offense is going to look like. We know that Liam Cohen likes to run the ball. We know that Brian Thomas is the clear wide receiver 1. We don't know if Trevor Lawrence is going to be good enough to take this leap in year 5 or something. He's been a guy that we've been waiting on him to take a leap for years now. And all this could sound stupid, right? Maybe the Jaguars' offense is great. Travis Hunter plays primarily on offense, and this passing offense takes a huge leap, and I sound stupid. And I will even put up this chart from Ron Stewart. The idea that rookie wide receivers have league-winning upside down the stretch of the season is the most harped-on edge in fantasy, but it is for good reason. And I agree with him, right? You can see all these points per games from weeks 9 to 17, 18 since 2010. You know, most of these guys are elite wide receivers outside of Elijah Moore. I wouldn't call Tank Dell elite at this point in his career, and Juju had a good couple of years. I mean, the rest of these guys had elite points per game in the second half of the season, and I could see that for Travis Hunter, right? I just think there's so much uncertainty. So, yeah, leave a like and comment down below your thoughts on these players. Subscribe; it helps me out, and I appreciate it. If you think that this Travis Hunter line, for example, is stupidly low or high, Underdog is a great place to take a higher or lower than, because you can get over $100 for free just by joining the app with code Fortune, and they will also give you, when you join, a half a point for NBA or half a yard for NFL, basically to where you don't need to pair this Travis Hunter line or whatever line you want to with something. It'll just be a free half a yard, pair it with the Travis Hunter or somebody over under, and you'll get a bunch of free money. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.